This is my gaming table with a twist. There you are. Yeah, I'm not a YouTuber, so let's start with the big reveal. And this is how long it takes to change over in real time. Obviously it's a different spin on the design compared to a conventional board game table. I mean, obviously people are welcome to their opinions. I think this one has some proper advantages and a couple of drawbacks. I'll get into all that and I'll get into how you build it at the end. A board game table, to me, needs to be three things. It needs a nice playing surface that is big and accommodating for large games, like a table with a neoprene gaming mat. It should also set the vibe and make people excited to play, like a table with a neoprene gaming mat. And it should hide away a set-up game so that you can come back to it later. Get wrecked, neoprene gaming mat. The big thesis here is that I think the standard board game table is great, but it has this design that creates additional problems which then have to be solved with clever carpentry, clever ideas, and if you're doing it not yourself, then it costs loads of money, or if you're doing it yourself, it takes lots of skill. So this is me trying to make something that has a different spin on it and solves the problems in different ways. For example, board game tables have this recessed pit in the middle. That is great for playing on, and it means that then there is this lip around the edge of the table. In order for that to be comfy to rest your arms on, the lip has to be wide. And by the time you've got a big recessed space for a big game and a comfy enough lip, the table is big. It is so big. This one that I've built fits in my kitchen, and I don't think that would reasonably be true of any conventional one. I think there's a lot to be said for building a table like this, which is like a sleeper table. It is just a table on top. It has a nice solid top. There are no divisions. There's no risk of liquid going between slats. And I didn't need to do anything clever to do that. I understand that the successful companies have ways around it, which cost money. And yeah, my child can play on top of the table. There's no real problem. I can refinish it if I want to. It's just a table on top. I think that's important. Or it's important because this is not just a board game table. This is our kitchen. And I don't think that I could have a board game table doing the main job in the kitchen, because it would make me feel bad having scratches on it, knowing that it cost £2,000. So yeah, I need something that is super able to handle just being a table. And in addition, the flat top means that I don't need to design drinks holders that slot in around the edge. They just go on top. You're not going to tip your drink into the recess because there isn't a recess. And this table has slot-in extensions. They still work. It can still just be a big table. It can be a big board game table. It can be a big kitchen table. We can have guests around it. It does table things really well because it's a table. Then I've got this really sneaky little handle down here. You pop it open, and there is the space. There is the big cavity inside with this hardboard piece that is felted. Feels good. And you just slide it out with a game set up on it. Now, because it is just a table, the depth is a bit smaller than a typical board game table. I put the miniatures on their side, but that's pretty much it. It does fit big decks of cards still. And yeah, it takes a steady hand to get it on top. But I've got a steady hand. It's fine. The playing surface itself is 90 by 74 centimeters, which is actually pretty big. It can fit the entire Pandemic board and all the player stuff, or even fit Bunny Kingdom at the same time if you are intent on playing the games at the same time. But you don't need to stop there. You can go beyond the limits of the play surface. You can extend onto the table. Of course you can. Why wouldn't you be able to? It's all flat. So you can play Twilight Inscription, the Spreadsheet Simulator Art Project Oddity, up to 8 players, which is more than there are people who want to play this with me. Some pros and cons before the build. This just brings something a little different to what a board game table is. It can still do the big thing of being able to save a game, which I wanted. And it's so much cheaper, so much simpler. The flip side is if you've got a dedicated gaming space, you might want the lovely, beautiful gaming table in the middle of it that acts as a centerpiece and doesn't need to be a kitchen table at the same time. For us, this was a good answer. You require 1 table, cabinet hinges from an IKEA desk that you previously cut up, cabinet hole drill bit, mine was 28mm as that matches my hinges, dowels, handle, long piece of wood cut perfectly by the people at our DIY store. I picked 300mm wide because that made the maths work really well, because you can buy it in lengths of 2400mm. So you can see from the numbers, I only had to buy 1 piece of wood. For the playing surface, you'll need a suspicious piece of MDF that's in your loft for some reason. Some felt, hot glue or similar to stick it down. If you're refinishing a cheap-ass table, you also need a foam brush, oil, sandpaper, and ideally a sanding tool. It is wise to practice. Try drilling dowel holes and cabinet holes in scrap wood. I used a piece of tape around the drill, which helps me get exactly the depth I wanted as you drill up to the tape. I also tried installing my cabinet hinge to determine the spacing I would need. Normally the large hole side is put in the cabinet door and the flat part is screwed onto or inside the cabinet, but I did the opposite as that maximised the size of the opening. The underside of my table had parts for storing the extensions, which I removed. The plan is to neatly cut one of the long edges in 2 places so the middle can become the door. If you think that cutting an important structural element of your table will make it weaker, you are correct. As my table needed refinishing, I sanded it to hell and back. Cut the corners off your longest piece of wood so that it can fit inside the underside of the table. This piece will also hold the door. Cut the side of your table carefully to make the door. This cut will be visible in the final product, so go slow and get it right. I made my opening as wide as possible while leaving those screws at either side to keep those edge pieces attached to the tabletop. Put the legs back on and learn from your stupid mistake. Cut the corners again, leaving much more room for later access. Install the cabinet hinges in the long piece you've added and do a test fit. Make sure the hinges have enough room to move freely. Using the tape-on drill trick, drill holes in the wood to the perfect depth to fit your dowels. My timber is 18mm thick and my dowels are M8 or 8mm. This piece is now held by 6 dowels, that's 2 out at each end and 1 either side of the opening. This project would be a bit simpler if you used screws and came from the outside and maybe covered them or painted them. But the dowels internally is very sneaky and it means that you do have to disassemble the table frame in order to insert this piece, but when it's in, it's locked in place and it's completely hidden. Install the hinges on your door. Little adjustments are possible later, but the basic measurements should be from the practice session earlier. We now have a door that can only be opened from the inside. Hooray! Test fit once more. Here I filled in a crack with plastic wood filler, and then I did 3 layers of worktop oil to finish the table over days. If your table did not come from a Facebook Marketplace, you can skip this step. Back outside for the last 2 pieces of wood, which will go into the side of the long piece and will ultimately support the surface. They've got just 2 dowels at each end. If you're bad at following your own measurements, you can make your dowel hole a little wider by force. I then found a much better technique for putting dowel holes at a consistent height after I'd already drilled the majority of holes in this project. Here is the table in place with the original playing surface that my wife made that actually inspired this project. I decided to get an edge pull handle, although any other handle would be simpler. This means I need to chisel out just enough space for it along the edge. I secure it in a clamp, which is what I call my cardboard box. Here's footage of me pretending to chisel, because I'm holding my phone in the other hand to film it. Now for the playing surface. Get your suspicious board from the loft and cut it down to size. It should be the biggest size you can fit while still comfortably being able to get your fingers either side of it. 3mm MDF or hardboard would be perfect, but mine is thicker because it was free. Ask an adult to help you iron your felt flat. Then get an adult to help you hot glue it to the board. We found it was enough to only glue the edges to the bottom so the top could stay completely flat. Finally, set up a large board game so you can film it and show your friends. Seek compliments, but try not to look desperate. Put the game away. And that's the table. Total project cost was £136. That was from a £50 Facebook Marketplace find. The style was designed around like any old IKEA table, so I think this could be replicated pretty easily. And I'm not a particularly good word worker. I just try, and if it doesn't work, I try and fix it too. It's not the hardest project. So I hope this inspires people to try it or try something similar, just remembering that there's not only one way to make a board game table. I haven't christened this with like a solo campaign game yet, but I should. I'm thinking maybe ISS Vanguard or Iridia. Suggestions welcome. What could live in there and be exciting to come back to for weeks at a time. Thank you to Wyrmwood for letting me use their footage for B-roll, I assume. I didn't ask. And if you want to not build your own table and instead buy one, check Wyrmwood out or any number of other very capable carpentry houses who sell these. Yeah, I'm not a YouTuber, so don't forget to do something nice for Mother's Day. And if you like this video, good.